Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am particularly excited about today's lesson because I haven't done one of these in a while. It's where I take a finished sketch, as you can see here, and I'll walk you through the sketch here in a couple minutes, and then I explain to you how I achieved all of the layering and texturing details, etc., how long it took, and then what steps you can take to achieve something like this. Now, I want to give some background on what this creature is. I have a personal project called Ecor 117, which is a fictitious planet. It's a personal project of mine I've been working on for a while. This creature's part of it. It's called a carphanoid. And I'll just kind of run the sketchbook up here so you can see it from head to toe. It's a very tall creature. There's a human there. Just a typical 6-foot warrior. Or 5 foot, I don't know. Just a human being. And it's pretty big. Okay, you could probably even say this thing might belong in the same dimension as the creatures in the mist. But with that said, I'm going to show you how I achieved all of these stretched skin technique, the stripes, and all of that. Now, when you do a drawing like this, it does not start off directly in detail, which I think is an Achilles heel for a lot of artists that are wanting to learn how to draw, because we have these images in our head of what the creature or character is supposed to look like, or they want it to look like, but they completely bypass the foundation laid for that drawing in order to achieve it. With this particular critter, I started with the head up here. Now, I didn't have an idea of what I wanted this to look like. Oh, by the way, just some of you claim that I cheat by tracing. No, there's no tracing back here. See, there's a weird little critter right there that looks like an egg sac, and then there's a dude with a raven helmet on. I don't know, just for practice. All right. So anyway, getting back to this, here's how I would start the sketch if I were to want to do something different. I'm going to go down here. Because I have all of this graphite here, I am very particular about how careful I am not to smear stuff. I'm going to reach behind my camera here, and I'm just going to get a white piece of paper, okay, because when I drew this, I made sure not to rub my hand across the actual graphite, especially when I started to layer everything up and make it look really pretty. Okay, so this is what I do sometimes. I'll just take a printer paper and then I can rest my palm right on it, and then I'll just move it however I need to do, and then it keeps, all my hand oils away and stuff. All right, so here's what I would do. First, a very, very light outline. And I think what I'm going to do is just maybe an alternate head or a face. And I want to make sure that everything is in focus. Once I have this rough, very gestural light outline done, I'm then going to move on with putting in just an outline for maybe the mandibles, maybe some weird things that are growing off the head. But you can see here that I'm keeping everything very, very light. Now, whenever I do these long, detailed sketches, as this illustration over here, I tend to do it in about maybe 6 to 10 hours. Never in one sitting though, because I cannot sit for more than like 30 minutes tops working on something that long. I just can't do it. Okay, so once I have this in here and I'm starting to form the head, I like to think about structure and about how appendages grow from the head and the skull or whatever it's made of. Now, I can already hear in my head what the comments are going to be. Am I looking at reference? Am I thinking about critters and stuff? No, I am not looking at reference. However, I have obsessed about animals all my life, so I'm combining the knowledge that I have, and I'm just making up some shapes as I go, but I can also kind of break the rules a little bit, which is it's a fun thing to be able to do, but I am also constantly looking at reference whenever I have to learn new techniques about, a client's wants. Sometimes they want a beast that I've never drawn before. And in that case, you know, if it's mixing a squirrel and a bear together, okay, I know what those roughly look like, but I would still have to look at some reference. Now here, I'm just pulling knowledge from all the insects that I've drawn before. That's my specialty. I mix very creepily mammalian, human, and insect, crustacean DNA, genes, whatever you want to call it, all in one. And it offers some really, really scary, otherworldly, you know, Lovecraftian things, which is fun, right? All right, so once I'm starting to get this head in here, you'll see that these long appendages are kind of growing out from the mouth, similar to what I did for the Carphanoid's upper lip. Okay, so this thing right here, these are, I guess you can call them a proboscis, but it's not really a proboscis, similar to what you see on a mosquito or whatever, especially down here. You know, if this thing wants to dip down and try to sense where the foliage is and food source and such, because this thing is blind. All right, so maybe this thing is going to be blind too. I want to acknowledge that. And one of the happy accidents that I had when I was drawing this creature are these big bulbous shapes coming off the side of the head. I immediately started thinking, what if this is like an extra sensory organ? Similar to how sharks and dolphins have echolocation, you know, like the organ within their bodies. What if this creature had something similar to where it can hear but not see, and it can sense where everything was? I think what I'm going to do now is actually give it some form of long tongue, just to be fun. But it's not going to be your typical tongue. So I'm not just going to round it off as expected. I might put like a split at the end of it. Okay, so I don't want to be predictable with this. And that's one of the things that I made sure not to do with this creature. I didn't want to be predictable. So one of the ways that I encourage aspiring concept artists to not be predictable is look at joints, look at hands, and look at like the mouth and places where we normalize how we view animals. Okay, so for example, if we see a dog mouth, we also think about bear, we think about wolverines, we think about you know, pretty much foxes, even anything that can eat meat, and they all have canines. Well, what if your creature didn't have that, but it still ate meat? How would it chew? Okay, that's kind of the things that I like to think about whenever I'm doing creatures. So this little slit in the mouth here with this crazy proboscis tongue thing coming out, what if that's how it grabs food and then it just sucks it back into the head? So that'd be kind of cool. The Carphanoid up here has a pretty powerful jaw, pretty strong, jagged jaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this one a slightly softer touch to the jaw. However, I'm still going to make it deadly in a sense that if this creature brings in a food source by hooking it with this tongue, there are these razor sharp chin spikes that are going to help the food, or help the creature keep the food near its mouth. And I think what else it needs is maybe some very small teeth-like appendages around that opening so that it can grab it and then the poor sucker will not be able to escape. Sucker as an animal or a human if it decides to hunt it. Okay, so I also don't want to keep this head just oval shaped and then have a skinny neck. I want it to have a pretty powerful neck. You look up here, the Carphanoid, so you have the deltoid muscles, deltoids. Right where the bicep would be located, there's this really long membrane that's attached literally to where the earlobe would be. Okay, and what if this creature had something similar? So notice how, if you're following along with me from the beginning, I still have not shaded anything because I want the outline to be there, and I'll show you the technique that I'm going to use in a minute. But I can tell you, once I get the outline in, I just take my pencil and I do a very, very light coating of shading across the entire thing, including the line work. And then what I do after I do the shading, which is a minimum of 3 different passes, then I start figuring out where the darker areas are going to be immediately. Because I can always add shading around the darker areas and just build up, you know, the graphite, because you can always go darker, you can't go lighter. So I immediately want to establish where the dark areas are first. Like for example, in the mouth region, I already know that's going to be dark because it's the inside of the mouth. There's no, but I'm not shading yet. I'm not beginning that process, but I already know the mouth is, because almost all mouths are dark because there's no light getting in them. So that's what that is. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put some skin, maybe stretch down here, and then maybe the neck. It's kind of like a strange worm. I don't want it to get in the way of my original drawing. Okay, add some thickness to it. Maybe the shoulder is down here. It's kind of like a weird slug, huh? And then I think I know what I want to do already up here. I want to put in some pretty deadly hooks. And the reason I want to do the hooks is I want to give a purpose for those appendages. I don't want to just have them dangling above the head. I want those things to have a use. So now imagine if this thing is hunting, or if it needs food source like fruit, whatever it eats, it can hook the prey, drag the prey closer to its mouth, then the proboscis comes out, and then it pulls all of it into the mouth, and then it definitely cannot escape because it has these hooked or spiked chin parts. I don't have any anatomical reference for this yet, so I'm just making up parts. It's the dangling thing that has sharp parts. You're going to hear that throughout the video. Okay, now I think I'm ready to put on a coating. So here's what I do. I'm using a 4B pencil just because I personally like 4B, and then I'm just going to lightly put in a coating. So I'm going to go this direction first. Right like that. Now notice how there's still gaps in the strokes. That's okay. But one thing that I am keeping track of is that I go in one single direction the first pass from start to finish. I don't switch it around. I keep it. I want to keep it unified, even up the little appendages, the little arms with the hooks at the end. Then after I get that first pass, now I'm going to turn it. All right, so I'm going to turn right like that, and I'm going to get another direction. And because I have more graphite down here and deliberate mist that I sketched in, I'm going to use my piece of paper so I don't smear anything. And then I'm just going to go in a different direction. I'm going to carefully hold my pencil in the direction that I want to go, and I'm going to keep my strokes close together. That's another shading tip. Those of you that are new to my channel that haven't seen my previous lessons, which I encourage you to do. Okay, when you start shading and you don't push harder, you just do it lightly first, your ability to build up graphite is like much more increased. Okay, pass number 3. And this is minimum. Now, with me personally, I'm never satisfied with 3. But for people first starting out learning how to shade, 3 is a good way to start. I'm just carefully laying it in now, but I'm going in this angle regardless of where it is on that head. So I'm just going to push it up like this. I'm going to go all the way to the end of the head. All right, and even across the small arms where I might be going outside of the lines, that's okay. Because the outline that I gave the creature's head, that's already there to establish where the body is. So you don't have to worry about going outside of the lines. Once you're comfortable with at least 3 different passes, I personally, I'm just going to do one more. So I'm just going to flip my sketchbook upside down, or almost upside down. Okay, and then I'm going to go in this angle. So the great thing about having a sketch on the edge of the page, the pager, blah, that's a blooper, I'm leaving that in. The great thing about having a drawing on the edge is that your hand can just rest off of the entire sketchbook. So you can just comfortably add in more markings and you're good. Okay, so I see that I have a similar direction there and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to turn it like this and I'm just going to hit it with one more direction. Turn my hand slightly. There we go. So when I turn this back to the normal position, oops, it's stuck on my desk. Okay, so once I have that in the normal position, look how at least decent that looks for a covering. So it's very, very light. I didn't get darker anywhere. What I do want to do is start to add a little bit a darker treatment of the graphite on the actual face. And the reason that is because I want to draw attention to that area. So I'm being a little bit more careful about how I'm applying the strokes now. I'm going back and forth very lightly. It's naturally getting darker anyway when you do this, but now this is now the fourth pass. And you're gonna start to see a really nice effect happening. It's like a light wash of watercolor almost, but with graphite. And then I'm just going to start switching positions again with my hand because it's in such a small area. I don't have to twist the sketchbook around for small areas. And once I start doing that, I'm getting pretty happy with the area around the mouth. Small strokes now. But notice that I'm only concentrating on the head. So this is exactly what I did up here for the Carfinoid's body. And I want to duplicate that as I move down here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually darken those chin spikes. And I'm going to start dark, I'm going to push harder, and then I'm going to gradually release the pressure as I move up the chin. And here's the great thing. This is why I really stress layering your graphite in 3 to 4 to 5 different passes to have that nice coating, is because whenever you start to add in details around it or on it, any of the gaps that you have not filled with that detail, it's already taken care of because of the shading that you had previously laid down. This is why it's so crucial to layer your drawings instead of just like hitting the ground running and starting blindly with details, because then you have to worry about it, you know, picking up the background color of your paper. With me, I'm using moleskin, which offers like a really cool old school parchment paper look, you know, like old pirate maps and stuff. So it adds like that pale creamy color. But with white paper, I mean, if you're going to do the same type of sketch but on printer paper, you have to be even more careful because there's no tone on white paper. It's literally stark white. You can't get any more vibrant than that. So if you miss the gaps in your shading, you probably will have to do 6, 7, 8 different passes. And like I said, that's what prompted me to, you know, get the patience to actually do 10 to 15 different passes. This entire sketch right here, I think I mentioned in the beginning, it took a good 8 to 10 hours. Like it was there, but it wasn't in one sitting. I just had to, constantly go back and rethink about what I was doing. Okay, so not to go down a rabbit hole on that. I haven't started on the appendages yet, but there's a nice coating happening and a nice gradient happening with the graphite moving up. Now I'm to the point where there are no gaps left over from the strokes that I had put in for the shading. Because this right now with the teeth, the jaw, the original tone that I put down there, all of that, it's really starting to layer up. I'm caking on the graphite, which is good. That's what I want. And now I'm just thinking about places that I know I'm going to want dark. All right, so for example, in here where the tongue is, I'm going to give a slightly darker outline, and I'm just going to move to a lighter touch as I move down that proboscis. You know what? No, I'm not going to call that a proboscis. It's coming straight out of the mouth. as a tongue. So I'm just going to keep it as a tongue. I do know that this part of the tongue that I had outlined is also going to be a little darker due to the cast shadow from the mouth. Because I'm imagining that this thing is just lit from above. So there's a little arrow, so the light source is here, but it's a very soft ambient light. I personally like sketching in soft, dimly lit light, just so the darks and the lights kind of dance together. That's the only way that I can put it. Harsh shadows are great if something's in spotlight, but I don't like drawing too much attention to specific areas more than I have to. And when you do something in a spotlight, you're forced to. All right, so, and I mean, drawing stuff in a spotlight and harsh shadows, it's amazing. It's so much fun. And I do it. I just, like, for my creatures, I typically don't. Not unless a client asks me to. So now I'm pretty happy with this mouth. I'm just adding details around it. It's a very strange mouth. Now that I look at it, it kind of looks like a camel spider. I didn't even try to do that. Camel spiders are disgusting, man, but they're amazing at the same time. Okay, again, here comes another pass. I'm moving up. By this time, it's super smooth. So you're going to start to see the gradient happening. It's dark, it's medium, and then it gets lighter up here. Now, I will say, I'm pretty convinced, I've convinced myself, that these hooks up here are also going to be dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the tip of the claw, which is what I was doing here at the chin. So you notice the carphanoid, the chin, right there. It's dark, and then it moves lighter as it goes down the jaw. At the end of these antennae, they go dark, and it moves lighter. I put in some misty effects to make it look like the atmosphere is kind of overtaking the creature, or it's physically moving through it. Anytime that I start, oh, same thing up here with these shoulder spikes. I started dark at the tip, and then I moved lighter down. If you do that, it's a really fun technique to accentuate spikes, scales, pretty tentacles, even if they're closer to you. Pretty much anything coming at the viewer. This is what's really going to help establish depth when you do something like this, because at the end of the day, we all want our drawings to look and feel alive. Okay, and there's a lot to be said about your line gestures, like the movement of your sketch, but also you want it to look like it's living and breathing. So the gradient, the lighting, because lighting will kill a good design. I see it in 3D all the time. I'm guilty of it. I've had some pretty good creatures in my day designed, and then when I try to light it, it just looks like crap. And I just kind of don't know what to do after that. Okay, so once I have this, I'm just going to establish some structure on this side of the mouth as I wrap around, which is another thing that I want to stress to you guys is when you start to draw your creations and make it look 3D by adding in the shading and the values and everything, you want to establish that there's structure on the other side of that face. Just look up here at the carphanoid. So I have this chin spike right here, and then I have the other one, but it's ever so slightly lighter. Over here I have the other side of the face. It's ever so slightly lighter because I want to give the illusion that there is a body on that side also, and it's living and breathing in the environment even though it's on a 2D plane. Alright, so once I have this, this is the amount of work that I put in just to establish the gradients first. This is without detail, and I'll show you how to put on detail soon. I can't wait for that. So once I got that atmospheric perspective in there, I then can start to think about, okay, what are the body parts that I really want to come out? Now, I do like that bulbous organ that's on the side of this creature's head. What if I have something similar but not the exact same thing? So I'm just going to add in an oval here. And I think I just immediately started sketching the head of a wasp. Oh man, I didn't mean to do that. But we'll see how it happens. We'll see what happens. Maybe we can change it. You know what might change it? I'm gonna put like a strange appendage coming off of that eyeball or that organ. So then it might not look like an eye. Or it might, and there could be an organ off of the eye. Happy accidents, guys. You are literally witnessing this in real time. I did not plan for any of this to happen, but I'm just going to kind of go with it. The other thing that I want to start to establish now is what the heck is happening with these joints on the strange hook arms coming from the head. So I think this part down here is the major shoulder joint, I guess you can call it. I don't think a shoulder is on the face, but let's just say that there needs to be a cluster of muscles down here with tendons. Okay, now this is where you can kind of break some rules as long as you make it look believable. Okay, so like you have your tendons attaching to specific joints up here, similar to a forearm, similar to your ulna, and then maybe a thick part down here, and then you have your crazy hook. Okay, so I'm just gonna start dark here at the hook, which I meant to do 10 minutes ago, and then I'll just slightly walk up some value and then start dark and immediately go light as I go down that arm. So again, why did I start dark and I went down lightly with the graphite? What I was talking about before with if it's closest to you, just darken it a tad and then lighten it as it goes back, because it creates atmospheric perspective, and it also it has that illusion of depth, and we all want to achieve depth in the things that we draw. Also, lawn care's here, so I might have to stop this for a while. I'm not sure yet. I probably will. So I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so once I establish that the darkness right here where the hook is, the other part that I know that I want to make a little darker on the arm to show that depth is the secondary joint, or the, I guess you can call it the bicep part of that appendage. So here's the forearm, here's the bicep. Now why would I be putting it on the bicep? Because if this thing is lit from above, then this forearm is going to cast a shadow on that part. This is another easily forgotten thing when it comes to creating depth in your drawings and creating realism. Okay, the cast shadows are majorly important because it lets us know where things are in space. So I'm just going to start applying a slightly heavier set or a heavier coating of graphite here. And then I'm going to get dark right there in the joint and then move lighter as I come down. The reason I'm going lighter as I come down is because the shadow is diffused, and again, the light source is ambient, so it's diffused throughout. Okay, now that I have that established, pretty happy with that, that's fine. There are other areas that I'm just going to have to pay attention to with that. For example, this bulbous area, the shoulder joint, wherever it starts to wrap underneath, that's going to be darker for that shoulder joint. Why is that? Is because if it's lit from above, think about less light penetrating underneath that round area. Same thing with out here. Now, another thing to help you create realistic drawings when you put shading on is pay attention to your edges and how value is coming off of the edge. Okay, so if I put in value on that far right arm and then I move up, so this entire arm is going to be lighter because it's in the distance, similar to this, you know, this proboscis right here, this crazy thing coming off its head. I'm going to want to do the same thing. Once I start putting in the darker area around this shoulder joint, and out here where I start to darken the edges like I was talking about, it's going to start to bring a more realistic light source effect to it. So what that means is think about a sphere and then think about the core shadow that runs around a sphere or a cylinder or pretty much anything rounded. The core shadow will sit towards the edge of the shape because that is the area where the least amount of light is touching as it wraps around the other side. And then of course you have bounce light, which is bouncing off of different objects you know, like the atmosphere, the ground, trees, rocks, or whatever. So once I establish the darkness around there, you can see that it almost feels more complete since I just added that little detail and that's it. I'm not going into any fancy hair or skin or wrinkles, scales, etc. It's just a matter of darkening that part. Now, look at these two shoulder joints. This one is going to have to be slightly darker, or this one is going to just have more detail in it, while this one stays the same. The thing is, when we start to put a lot of detail in a sketch like this, and a sketch like this over here, you have to pick, well, you have to choose your battles. Okay, so for example, the bicep, tricep, and shoulder area over here is obviously the focal point with the head, but over here, notice how much lighter the inside of this bicep area is, and this arm right there. Because of that, look what I was able to do with the throat. The throat is actually coming at us. How is that possible? It's depth, it's atmospheric perspective. I applied more value to that gullet area than I did to that shoulder area on the other side of the form being the creature. What this does is it brings in atmospheric perspective, and it shows that this thing, even though it's drawn on a 2D plane, it still feels like it's living and walking wherever it is. You want to do the same thing with any sketch that you are working on. So for this, I think what I'm going to do is I like the details that I put up here. If I bring that down a little bit, I like the details that I put up here on that bulbous organ hanging out. So I think I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to lightly put in an indication of maybe some lines or strange, I guess, stepping scales as it moves across that rounded area. The other thing that's going to be adding realism is that I need to establish what that form is doing. And by doing so, the lines that I'm adding across here are actually helping me a lot, because I'm running them across that surface and it's rounded. So I'm just arching or arcing the lines right here, but I'm making sure that I'm following the direction of the shape. Once you do something like that, then it starts to establish what the shape is actually doing. And here's the other fun part. This rounded part right here in the center of that shoulder, it's going to be the closest to us. So I'm just going to start dark, and I'm just going to fade that off. Start dark, fade it off, start dark, like this. So now all of a sudden it's going to look like it's coming at us. And then I can start to darken on the sides of that joint right here. Now, why am I darkening the side of the joint? It's because not only is it a rounded shape, so we're thinking about putting value on a sphere and a cylinder, anything rounded. The light source right here, I established it already with that arrow coming straight down. So that means that the underbelly of this is going to get the least amount of light. There's going to be a core shadow there. And I can start to bleed off some heavier graphite across that strange eye area that I accidentally turned into wasp eyes. But because it's light, I can kind of put some value over that and fix that problem, because I did not want that to become an eyeball. But that doesn't suggest that I can't use that as something cool later. Now, another happy accident that just happened that I didn't plan on. It looks like I added in some muscle for one of these teeth. Or I guess you can, think about the predator's mouth. Those of you that are familiar with Predator, I don't know how you couldn't be. You have those four large mandibles coming out, but the mandibles on the upper part of Predator's mouth have some muscle and it goes up into the head. So what if we did that? And it showed by just darkening the underside of that tendon, I guess you can call it. And then maybe a little bit on that bottom jaw part. So now we're starting to really establish some form. This is getting fun. I wouldn't be able to show you any of this had I not first done the outline with the sphere, the rounded shapes, and then put in that very, very light coating of graphite in the very beginning of the sketch. This is why layering is so important, because now what I can do is I can just kind of bring my pencil back here, go over it very lightly, just put in an extra coating to make sure things are smooth, and then I can start adding in some more detail. So I like how the shading kind of runs off of this joint, the shoulder joint. So what I'll do is I'll just put maybe a shadow that goes straight down. It's a little darker. Now, why would I be putting in a shadow that goes straight down? Think about the ambient lighting, the diffused lighting that I have established for the atmosphere. It's going straight down so that everything down here is in shadow because it's on the under part of the face. And then I'm just going to kind of bleed off that shadow as it goes into the rest of the head. Now, I do like this forehead area. I like that a lot. So I'm going to darken this just so you can see it a little easier, so I can see it easier. I'm the one drawing it. And then right up here at those top teeth, and I can put in some other structures to make it look like the teeth have like underlying muscles and roots and everything, and they're going up into the skull. This part right here is rounded, so I'm just going to put in some more values and then fade it off into the forehead. There we go. Now that's looking kind of cool. When I'm looking at this now, I'm starting to get the sense that I'm kind of losing some of the details. So when we look up here, the carphanoid's head, I don't know, it might be a little too blurry. I'll move that down a little bit. When you look at the carphanoid's head, look at all those areas that are like jet black. Okay. That's what I'm going to eventually do on this face right here. But I need to figure out what areas that I want black, because there's a lot more structural changes in this skull and this head than there will be in this one. This one's pretty round. This one's pretty complicated. It's got roundness. It has square jaws. It has things coming off of the bottom jaw, the nose. I mean, you name it. It's got it. So I want to be careful. So for this, I think what I'll do is I will play up these strange gills, I guess you can call them, on that shoulder joint, and really play that up. I like that. And then maybe get a little darker with the arm. Okay, and the reason I'm getting darker just now in the back of that joint is because the value right next to it, so where my pencil is pointing to, that value is light. This is going to be dark, and it adds a really nice contrast with it. So this obviously sticks out more than this now. So that when I go back to this area and I put in some more shading, no matter what I do to this area from now on, I don't want to make it any darker than this. So now I have that to kind of gauge what I want to do. I also kind of, I bounce around my sketches a lot too. I'll get excited about one area and then I'll just start to put in some details for another one. And then all of a sudden I started to put more details in an area that I didn't know could be looking cool. So I'll just keep at it. Now I'm really starting to like where these shapes are going. I'm doing a little circular motions now. Really tiny little circular motions. I'm not going straight across. Just really tiny little circular motions. Why am I doing circular motions? I've explained this before. It's so that whenever I do a circle, I go back over the previous area. So those of you that know what it feels like to sharpen your pencil and then start to shade, and then you get that really nice little flat part on it, and you want to keep shading in that flat part, when you go back over the previously drawn area, it covers it up nicely. So that's why I do it. So this is going to be a little darker for the wrinkles and such, because that graphite was already pretty dark there. So I want to make sure that there's a lot of contrast and it really pokes outwards. There we go. Okay, so I'm starting to notice that maybe this needs to be darker right up here. So I'm just going to push a little harder in certain little parts. Think about if this does have a crustacean joint and there's like exposed cartilage right there, it's going to be a lot darker right in there because it's like a crack where light definitely isn't getting in. Then I just had this idea to put maybe some bumps or ridges on top of that arm, and then fill those little tiny bumps with small circles of graphite, right like that. Yeah, now it's getting fun. It's just adding structure to areas that I, previously didn't think could have structure. Okay, and now once I have some more structure figured out, I'm going to start to look at some of the effects that I put in this head, and I want to duplicate them here. So I really like the wrinkles that I had done, so I'm just going to indicate maybe where some wrinkles can exist for this creature, connecting it to that part of the jaw. It's not the same creature, so I need to be careful about the whole bone structure in the jaw, what I think is existing underneath it. So maybe that bottom jaw with these crazy hooked teeth. You know what would help? This is totally an experiment. I don't know how this is going to work. I put that sharp one right in front of the tongue, but the back one is going to be behind it. I'm going to curl that up, and now you're talking about something looking deadly. I think there's going to be more of that. I guess you could call it chin spike on the other side. So it's going to fill that gap in right there. I'm going to darken the tongue, because that really, the whole tongue is going to be in shadow. And that did help. That definitely worked. Maybe this curls around. Ooh, that's deadly. It's super thin. Okay, and the other thing, I just want to make sure that there's at least indication of some form on the other side of those teeth. Maybe indicate where the teeth could exist. Maybe it's asymmetrical, so they just kind of grow randomly from the mouth. Put in some black there. Okay, so now we're really starting to add depth. So look how the blackness of that mouth is adding to the creep factor of this thing. Okay, the other thing that I forgot to mention before, when you have a complicated skull like this, it's really good to add the center line, or at least put it in your head that you know where the center line is. I know that the center line is going to run down this rounded shape and then down this part of the lip. Why is that important? It's because whatever I add on this side of the mouth, I'm going to have to foreshorten as I move over there. All of this is going to stay light, but over here needs to be a little darker. Darker as in the individual lines that I'm putting in. So maybe, because I like these lines coming off the mouth and the teeth, so I actually want to do more of that. And now that I look at it, maybe this thing doesn't have teeth. I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of like a crazy, ooh. It's like a demonic Groot almost. There we go. So up here is going to be a little darker because the graphite, or I'm sorry, the layering above it is lighter, and I can put in some more too. Right like this, and just fade it off into the background. This part of that hook can be a little darker. So look how this hook is darker than this one. I will have to get slightly darker with this one because it's kind of, now we're losing it, and I don't want to lose it. So I just want to put all in one direction. I'll walk that graphite over. Okay, so I just got to make sure that this is darker on this side. Now we can see that better. Now it looks like it's part of like smoke or mist or fog or something like that. Okay, so just to get into some other things that I think could benefit would be small dark areas that actually are pretty, or I'm sorry, small areas that could have dark bumps. And what this does is it sits on top of all the graphite that I have put down. This is important. This is going to add in depth as if these things really are on top of the skin. It's all about contrast and about making these things look believable and scary for that matter. It is pretty scary. You also need to think about where they grow. So if I do small tiny imperfections in the skin, or like bearded dragons have these, certain lizards have these, and insects even, they have these little hard knobs that kind of grow out. I mean, look at crustaceans, like crabs, they all have it. But usually crabs they're not dark. It's more of like almost an opaque type look. They grow out from the surface. This is sheerly for protection. All right. So once we have that, now it's really starting to add in some depth also. This part, I'm going to darken. So this is the original bulbous shape that I put on the side that later accidentally turned into eyeballs and that I fixed. Now these weird appendages coming out, those actually will be darker because now the contrast is there. Look at the darkness of those strange antennae coming off, and then the background of it is lighter. So there's a nice contrast. Okay, so you almost have like a 1, 2, 3 effect. You have one being this main appendage coming out. You have two with the second appendage coming out, but if it's slightly lighter because it's in the background. And then three, you actually have the skull in the back. There you go. And I'm going to have to even that out a little bit. So maybe we can put some stretched skin here. Yeah, that's looking cool. Let's give it a gullet too, but not the same shape as the carphanoid. Let's round it off. Okay, so once we do that, I'm going to darken in one direction and just kind of walk my pencil down. I'm keeping all the strokes close together, concentrating hard. One direction like this. I believe the jawline is going to be right there. So that's the back of the jaw. And then I'm just gonna, there's a crevice in here. Think about where the ear would exist and then the jaw. Think about your own face. Okay, you got the jaw in the back and then you have your earlobe, that little area in between. That's a crevice that the least amount of light is touching. So you're gonna want that a little darker. And also, it's a good way to cheat and kind of indicate where a surface ends, and there's like a precipice, not a precipice, that's not a good word for it, crevice. We'll just say crevice. There we go. Okay, so totally unplanned, but now it looks like the texture or the skin for this creature is more leathery, more old wood. It's kind of cool. And then I can just very, very lightly indicate maybe where some neck muscles would be, fade off some very loose gestural shading here. I mean, it's not complete without tiny hairs. So I think I'm just going to add in some tiny hairs. Just really creepy little hairs everywhere. Definitely on the tongue. These are small, thick, small, thick to thin lines done very, very rapidly and quickly. Okay, just like if you're a dude and you recently trimmed your beard all the way down, there's some stubble, it's the same thing. Dark to light, dark to light, dark to light, and they just kind of poke out. Okay, but now I notice there's some sameness going on. It's like a sea of sameness, and that is all of this is the same tone. I don't want that. Remember what I said earlier. This far right arm is going to get the least amount of treatment with shading. So that means that the head needs to be darker. So I'm just going to darken the head and kind of walk some value across it. Now the depth is there. Now the head is popping off, and then this appendage in the back. And kind of a fun technique that I do with my drawings is like the side of it, instead of having a harsh line as if it's definitely outlined and I don't want anything to go past it, I'll just fade off some mist from it. I'll just find gaps that I had not closed before, and I'll just kind of fade it off. So maybe this creature is living in a tropical region or maybe subterranean and just kind of walking through the mist looking for food. There we go. I got this from old painters too. You know, they tended to do this when they had hard lines and soft lines, and they mix them together to add really good depth. Okay, hopefully you liked today's lesson. I really encourage you guys to join our creature design workshop. Discord, look at the description below, check out the link. People are posting and joining every single day, giving tips and such. I just now started a creature design workshop for May. If you want to sign up, or if you want a private mentorship, please join the Discord, DM me, shoot me a message, or you could just email me, bobbyrebholz@gmail.com, whichever you're more comfortable with, and we can talk about it. All right, thanks all. See you later. Hello everyone. Today we have a pretty fun sketch that we're going to do. You'll notice here I have some colored pencils. Now, these are from Blick. They are not sponsoring today's episode. However, I forgot I had these. So my boys love drawing and doing artwork, and I found these in their bedroom and I totally forgot that they were in there. So I'm going to pull them out and I'm going to show you how to sketch a creature using colored pencils and basic spheres. Because it seems that the other video that I did where I was demonstrating how to use a pencil and combining it with basic spheres, that resonated quite well with everyone. So why not do it again, but with colored pencil? All right, so first things first, how are you going to start a creature sketch using colored pencil? Because you can't just pick everything. Let's start with primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. You got to think about the type of creature that you want to do. When I open this up, I'm like, okay, I really like the green, and I'm going to take some greens. I don't want to go overboard, so let's see what colors these are. Dark green, and then this one is, let's turn this around, grass green. Okay, dark green, grass green, and we're probably going to need a lighter green just for some highlights. Of course, you don't really need that just because a highlight, it's going to be a warm light, so let's go with this one. All right, this is Bice green. Tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I've never heard that before, but that's a new one on me. All right, got 3 greens. That's all I care about for now. So I'm going to move these out of the way, place them over here. And how would we start this? So we have these 3 here, and we're going to start by drawing some spheres. Now, I don't want to start with the darkest thing that I have, and that is, guess what? Dark green. I'm probably going to go with grass green. Now, whenever you're thinking of doing colored pencils, and even painting for that matter, you're going to have a local color, okay, or a local tone, however you want to say it, if you're drawing with graphite, etc. All right, I really like the lighter pencils just because you can always go darker later, but you can never get lighter. And I will say this, avoid using the white colored pencil as much as you can, because it's deceiving. It's not going to lighten everything up like you think it will. It can in certain instances, but enough of me yapping. Let's get into it. I think I'm going to turn this horizontally, and now I'm going to start drawing. So let's do an oval like this, very, very lightly. I am drawing with my shoulder, not my elbow, not my wrist, but my shoulder. Now, why is that? I'm going to say this every video, and that's because it's going to reach new artists, and you might not have heard this before, but when you start drawing with only your wrist right here, and you start drawing with your elbow only, you're going to start to make all of the rigid straight lines that you wanted start to bow, and it's not going to look right. Okay, so I have an oval here. I did state in the beginning that I was going to do spheres. Let's combine them. Let's do ovals and spheres, ellipses, however we can create this thing. That's going to be the main body right there. And then I want to add another one, and I don't want to do the same thing that I did before. Okay. Before it looked like a bacteria. Okay. So let's do an actual mammal. So we have the torso / back / belly, that whole area. And then, you could call it a thorax, but we're not doing an insect today. Instead, we're going to do a weird mammal-like creature. And then up here, let's do another sphere, but we're just going to keep this as round as possible. Now off camera, I'm moving my shoulder in pretty big movements just to make sure that I have everything looking light without, well, how should I put this? I'm making sure that I have all of the line work pretty crisp, even though it's still loose. So you'll see like a lot of the gesture lines right here are going over the same area, but it's not going over the exact same area. All right, so when you're drawing with colored pencil, just allow yourself to make mistakes and allow yourself to sketch freely, because you're going to thank yourself down the line. There comes a time when you're going to have to stop yourself because you're putting in too many details. Okay, so you want to avoid that. Okay, this thing's already looking weird. I might even do like a worm. Okay, all right, so let's do another sphere here and then another one. This might be the tail actually, and then a tinier one out here. So how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we are not done. I want to put in a leg, but I need to figure out what kind of leg. So let's do another joint right here in the middle of that main belly, right there. So you're probably wondering, what is that sphere? That is actually going to be the hip joint, because as I'm looking at this, I'm noticing that it probably could be some kind of cool alien bird. Like if I position the legs only in the middle of this torso area and then have it taper off skinnier up here, this could be like the neck of the bird. Thinking of emu, thinking of the terror bird. Those of you that study, the Pleistocene era and all the dinosaurs and everything. Of course, Pleistocene era was not dinosaurs. But anyway, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another sphere down here. I already have in my mind a position that I want the leg to be resting in. All right, so what is this? Why did I do these little ones right here? Remember in my previous lessons how I'm going to put a stick figure line going in the middle. So that's going to be the center line for my creature. Okay, here's how I'm holding my colored pencil. My pinky is helping guide my palm across the page. The cool thing about colored pencil, you don't have to worry about this smearing. So I actually can go over the drawing way more than what I was doing with graphite. But the center of this is going to help centralize, I know that's such a weird way to put it, centralize the leg, okay, the joints. You got your hip, you got the, I guess you can call it the knee, even though it bends backwards, and then you have the ankle, and then you're going to have the foot. Okay, so there's two ways to really do a leg using spheres. You could do the sphere first, or you could do just the direction by using stick figures of what or how you want the leg to bend, or you can start with the sphere first so you know where the joints are and then just connect them with the straight lines. However you want to do it, it's totally fine. Now, when we have this, we have to show weight distribution, so we have to imagine what the other leg is doing on the other side of the creature. So I'm going to do another leg joint, or another hip joint, right there. So this one is, I'm drawing through the object. I'm calling the torso the object. I'm drawing through the object. And there, yes, I could sit here and go, well, the leg's going to come out this way. Yeah, you could guess, but this helps structurally show you what's going on in your drawing on the other side. Okay, we use it in industrial design all the time. All right, so we have this. Now, remember, this is the leg where the body weight is going to be resting on it, because this one is coming up. This is the foot down here. All right, this one, we need to show that there's some stress going on. And now, and the other thing is, when you guys draw and you have some shapes overlapping each other, like for example, this left leg, it's the left leg, that's its head up here, it's going this way. Its left leg is bent upwards because it's going to walk forward and catch its weight, ahead of it. This right leg is the main leg where all the weight is down on it, and it's going to be right behind here, right behind that ankle. And that's okay. You just want to account for all the joints. Don't force don't think that you have to force shapes outside of your comfort zone so that you know other people will see it. And I think that's I noticed that a lot in creature sketching where, and it's a perspective issue too, but we'll tend to pool shapes away from where they're supposed to be because we think other people need to see that they're there. And again, when you're drawing and you want to draw accurately, you don't owe anybody anything. You owe it to yourself to make things as accurate as possible so that when they see it, they see accuracy and accurate perspective, etc. Or else you're just showing them the wrong thing. But again, it goes back to showing people. You're not doing this to show other people. You're doing this to learn and to show yourself that you know how to construct these things. Okay, products, cars, weapons, whatever. Okay, so the foot is going to lay, let's see if I can scoot this up here a little bit. The foot's going to lay right here. So see how light everything is? I have a really nice lighting setup showing you it in as much vibrant light as possible how light it actually has to be. I said light like 4 times. So I'm sorry. All right, so once we have this, I don't need anything major for the tail, but I do have the shape of, or the general shape of what the tail could be like. Now, am I happy with the head? No. But those of you that know my art know that I absolutely love birds and drawing weird, creepy, hairy, alien birds and creatures. So I'm going to try to do something as fun as I can with the beak. So as I move up here towards the head, this is going to evolve as I'm recording, and I think that'll be as raw as you can be with creature design. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to take my colored pencil. I'm still using the grass green, and I'm just going to connect the shapes by putting like a skin layer or a muscle layer on top of everything, and it's going to be slightly darker. So notice how light I'm still treating everything. Okay, like this. Okay. And I said like this, like I'm expecting everybody to just do what I'm doing. No, that's not the point. All of these ovals and all of these spheres are going to account for something. Every single one. I'm not just putting these in because I think they should be there. I'm putting these in because they have to be there. As if I'm making like an écrochet or a 3D model of this thing. Okay, so the tail, I'll move this up a little bit. I have the camera focused so it's going to hit the middle of my paper. I don't want to travel too far out from the center because I don't know how that focus is going to be. I'm not putting it on autofocus anymore because I know that's a pain for you guys to see it. All right, so let's move it up so you can see. Just very, very simple. It's almost like the tail to a lizard, but also an emu if it didn't have any feathers. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. But again, remember, this is going to be like a creepy, hairy, alien bug thing. So definitely going to need to watch out for that. Everything is very light. I'm letting my pencil, my colored pencil, travel lightly, giving me some gestural sketch lines here. That it helps me think. It's like my brain on paper. Okay. I put in some thickness where muscles would exist on the leg. Okay, because these are hind legs, so they're not going to show brachialis or biceps or triceps or anything. So I got to think about this a little differently than what I would do with a quadruped. Okay, now that we have this, I'm going to darken just a little bit where the underbelly is. Okay, in my previous lessons, remember how if I just skid my pencil across and go dark to light, that really sudden jerky movement is going to allow you to get good with dark to light lines and line thickness and line weight really quickly, because that's what's going to show depth in even your cruddiest thumbnail sketches. It's the ability to go dark and the ability to go medium and the ability to go light with your pencil, and even more so in one stroke. Okay, now here okay, wait. Before I go to the face, I immediately had an idea for the face, but I don't want to do it yet. I got to account for the other leg. Okay, so here's the joint. This is the knee joint for the left leg. All right, and then one other thing I have to do, I'm going to put in another sphere Okay, so this is the ankle. Down here is the joint like our wrist, okay? So like all the carpal bones are right up here. It allows our wrist to do all kinds of crazy things. This is the ankle for the creature, and then down here we're gonna stretch some toes out. And I don't wanna do the typical three-toed bird look, okay? I wanna do something completely different. So I'm going to put 4 in there. So I'm gonna put 1 sphere. I'm gonna make them dark enough so you can see them. 2, 3, and then I love the good old Velociraptor, the Deinonychus, you know, the Atrociraptor, whatever raptor, Utah raptor, whatever raptor you want to think of. I'm going to put a big joint in here because I'm going to put some kind of strange hook right there. So some kind of retractable claw where this thing can go hunting with. All right, and I'm going to put the finger joints in. Yeah, I'm going to just call them toes and fingers, whatever. Again, it's alien. But it's not going to be your typical raptor joint, I guess you can call it. I'm going to break it off into 2. So not only can that thing retract, it will literally hook you. It's almost like a separate hand on a hand. That is terrifying. All right, so I'm going to keep it like that. And maybe these other, let's see, how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, I have 3. So let's put these 3 smaller joints. Maybe these other toes aren't as powerful. Okay, so I'll just have to account for them bending upwards as the creature is stepping forward, just like a normal bird would do, or a mammal that has to bend its foot because that's how it walks. That's its gait. That's how it walks. Okay, so I'm going to jump into that other knee behind there. I'm going to make it slightly lighter. Okay, here's another trick to make sure that you are doing everything accurate. It's old school, but it works. Take your pencil like this. Okay, this is why these spheres, when you first start doing these sketches, come in handy. Take this center of the sharpened point, right there. All right, lay it down. Now, put your thumb to where that joint is. Okay, so move it onto the other leg, and now you know that the ankle happens right behind that hand. So now you're not guessing the length of the other limb. I think that's the other thing where artists kind of get too cocky and they just draw stuff. They just draw it because they think the measurement is right, and it's actually far from right. So you want to be careful of that. Down here, darken up the belly. Again, very, very short controlled bursts. Okay, there we go. Now you're going to start to see the line work really come in. And this is just the outer parts of the muscle, so like the shoulder muscles, at the thigh. Again, this thing also doesn't exist on Earth, so it could look a little strange. All right, so if that is that, now what we're going to do, you know what would be kind of funny? If instead of arms, what if it had some kind of weird 3-part tentacle coming out where some gills would exist? Yeah, this is see, this is the beauty of creature design, because I have no idea what's going to happen. I haven't even colored this sucker yet. I'm just starting to do things, building these up from very, very basic shapes. Okay, so I'm putting in some spheres. Maybe there's some cartilage joints in there, or some, yeah, maybe there's some bone inside these tentacles, or not. But I'm just going to make them noticeable, so they're coming out of this part that wings would exist or shoulders would exist, and we'll see what happens. Oh, here comes the head. The head. Okay, I'm going to have to turn my sketchbook a little bit. I want to make sure it's showing the right thing. And I'm going to put one eye here and one eye here. Okay, so this is probably going to look creepy. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a red back here, and I'm just going to indicate inside that eyelid. Now why red? Well, think about your blood vessels. Okay, think about subsurface scattering when you're doing 3D work, but also 2D work. You know, you got to show that there's some blood underneath these things, okay? Especially in the skin, the wrinkles, and places that are in crevices in the body, okay? There's usually blood that pools there. There's blood that pools on certain parts of the human body. Cheeks, okay? You get red in the cheeks. Your chest gets red. A lot of blood's happening in the chest. So you want to start thinking of those things as you apply color or colored pencil. All right, so now that we have that, again, no beak, but I am going to do an indication of where a cheek could exist. All right, and then let's do something really weird. How about let's put, not predator mandibles, but some kind of teeth that fold inwards, almost like a demonic caterpillar. Like that. So you can probably see a little bit of that right now, but I also don't want to go too insect. I'm trying to avoid the insect part on this. This is more of mammalian slash fantasy slash Tim Burton. Okay, something creepy in that kind of world. All right, now that we have this, I have an indication of what the head looks like. There's just a sphere there. However, that doesn't have to be end all be all for your design. It's just an indication. So I might actually go up a little bit just to show a larger cranium, because hey, maybe this thing is smarter than you think. Okay. Also, every time I record these videos, I happen to do so at the same time lawn care is happening outside of my building. So for whatever reason, if you start hearing some lawnmowers, I might have to stop until they leave, and then I'll be back. Okay, now that we have this, I'm starting to think of some really cool mouth ideas, but I don't want to go crazy with it. I will say this though. Originally, I didn't want to put a beak in, but I think I do want to put a beak in. However, it's not going to be your typical bird beak because we have these two weird mandibles on the side. So maybe it's more of, you know, like when turtles are in an egg. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you that are listening, the name of this. They actually have a beak tooth that they use to break out of the egg, the shell, and then the baby turtles go swim and everything, and then the beak tooth falls off. What if this thing had a beak tooth in the egg, but it never actually fell off? It's just a beak tooth and it just stays there. That's really creepy, but I think I'm going to keep it. Now, as I'm looking at the spot where the beak tooth could exist, I want you to know that I don't want to get any darker than the outline that I put for that beak. And the reason is because it's not going to be green. The green is just more for me to outline because the overall local color of this creature will be green. And I'm going to have to add in, you know, some reds, some browns, some contrasting colors to really pop it. And I'm going to do so. The majority of the color I'm going to add will be in the time-lapse section, but I'm going to show you at least how to apply the basics of colored pencil after I do all the sphere work, after I put in these details. Okay, so the beak down here, I'm just going to put directly underneath that one. I'm going to try to keep it roughly the same shape. There we go. Okay, and then the jaw, I already have that sphere underneath it to kind of give me an indication of maybe where the throat exists. So I'm just going to follow that. I'm going to trust my drawing. Okay, we got that. Underneath the neck, I'm going to put dark to light lines really quickly. And you're going to start to see a nice little transition from dark to light. All right. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure that I account for those crazy tentacle wings on the other side of the body. Okay, so if it comes out here, roughly on the other side, it'll come out here. And I want to put some chaos in there. Remember, I was teaching you guys in previous lessons about chaos. Anytime you have tentacles, limbs, fur, spikes, even fingers that are spread, toes, tails, you want to add some chaos because it adds mystery and it also adds action. Okay, you don't want to be stiff and boring with your creatures. Okay, so just to see where we're at, kind of looking back here. All right, so here's what I would do now. Oh, you know what we forgot? I don't want to forget this. The toes on the right foot down here. Okay, the other thing that is important to pay attention to is weight distribution once toes are spread. And this happens a lot in dinosaur sketches and creature sketches and even people, is that when you draw toes and it looks like weight is coming down on that toe, it does not sit perfectly straight like it normally would if you were to just lift your limb up. Okay, because weight is being pushed down on it. Now, I probably won't be able to show this double hooked crazy raptor claw right there because it's going to be behind this main foot. So let's darken up the main foot. Main foot as in the one in front, so that you know where it is. Okay, so that's darker. Okay, there's the ankle. There we go. Kind of looks like a hand, doesn't it? I didn't mean for that to happen. It just happened to go like that. Okay, colored pencil. Here's how I would start. Shading techniques. Turn it to the side, take your pinky, and you want to lightly glide everything across your page. Okay, so you kind of have an advantage here with using colored pencil because it doesn't smear nearly as much as graphite. But my hand is going to be slightly off of the page, and I'm going to keep everything light, and I'm going to tilt it to the side and make sure that all of the strokes are close together. So if you notice, the color green is going over those tentacles, and those tentacles are probably going to be a different color ultimately. That's fine, because the local color of this creature is green. So there's going to be green throughout it. You just don't want to push too hard because then it'll show up past any other new color that you want to add on it. There are some parts of this creature that will end up being really dark green, and that's okay to push a little harder because I know for a fact that like down here in the jaw area, I'm just going to push this really hard because I know that I want that part of the face green, so I have no problem putting that in there. Okay, and then there's that. And then let's do something kind of cute, kind of fun. No, this is definitely not cute. We're just going to put like a strange little hairy goatee right there. I don't know why that's there, but why do birds have mating feathers? Why do peacocks look the way they do? There's some strange stuff on our planet, so that's what I'm going to do. And you know what? I'm going to put in another eye. So it's going to have 4 eyes, but the main eye is not going to be super round like a creepy insect. I'm actually going to put some shape to it. Alright, so now it almost looks like a female eye, almost like fake lashes or something crazy. Okay, I kind of like that. Alright, so let's keep that. In here, I'm not going to use black for the inside of the mouth. Instead, think about what you can see inside of your mouth when you brush your teeth. Most of it is red and pink, okay? That's just the way our mouths are colored, and it's darker the farther in your throat you can see. I know it's kind of gross, but that's true. So what would we normally do in that instance? Well, let's take in this red. So this is, I'm looking at this, hold on. Carmine. All right, so let's do some carmine. And I'm just going to put a light carmine first inside the mouth. Because remember, we got to set the original tone for the overall color of a certain area. So we're going to put some carmine in there. Wouldn't it be crazy if it just had a crazy red mouth like that? And I can push really hard too, because I'm pretty happy with that. Remember, you can always go darker, you can't go lighter. So if I have that in there, but I leave the space for the teeth out, now you can see the teeth coming down, and I can put some of that pink color right by the teeth roots. Right like this. Now, here is the fun part. There are many other different colors happening in there, including purples, including browns. You could put black in there, but that's only in the spaces where the least amount of light is touching. So let me show you where you can actually put black. Okay, I'm going to use black Prismacolor because the Blick set that I have no idea where the black went. I'm going to put black right back in the center, and I'm going to fade it outwards into the carmine red. Okay, once I have this, I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm not going to put any more black on it at all. Just that little area. I'm not going to wipe away those tiny little pieces of wax either. I'm going to blow them away with air. Okay, you don't want to wipe it because then bad things will happen when you wipe away graphite, when you wipe away wax, anything across your image. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to continue to put some green on here. Let's see. Right down here in the neck, just a very, very faint amount. Because this whole underbelly, I'm going to make a different color. It's going to contrast the green that I'm using. But there's going to be green mixed in because it's the local color. So think about that. If you're drawing along with me right now, think about the local color that your creature is going to be. You want that color to be prominent throughout. Okay, it's the primary. Then we're going to do the secondary. So the secondary is probably a bigger contrasting, like, abdominal color. Okay, think about lizards. Think about the dark colored lizards in nature, but the bellies are lighter. All right, think about turtles. Turtle shells on the top are dark. Why is the belly lighter? It's because when it's swimming and there's predators underneath the turtle, when they look up, it blends in with the sun. That's evolution. It's pretty crazy. All right, so we're going to think of the same thing. Okay, so I'm just going to put some green across here. I'm just sticking to one area. See how I'm going over the face and over the eyes and over the beak? That's okay. Everything is really lightly done. All right, so now that we have this, I know where some more red can exist, and that is right in that strange little joint where the tentacles are coming out. That's going to be cool. Okay, I'm thinking now that I'm seeing this creature really come into fruition, what colors could I use to contrast with the green? Okay, well, the darker green, I can use a brighter yellow. I'm looking at I can even use an orange, but I have to be careful with that. Okay, it has to be a specific tone of orange. But with the eyes, I think what I'm going to do is put some gray in there. Now, why gray? I'm going to put some gray in because it's going to be unexpected and rather alien, but also corneas on this creature probably aren't pure white. All right, so I'm going to take the red again, and I'm going to put in some darker red right in the corners. Oops, did you see what I just did? That's totally a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. The red came down past the caruncula. That's the little caruncula part right in there. So why not just make it creepy like that? I'm going to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some red behind here. All right, like that. So now this strange looking eye is really starting to come up. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to go back to my original green, my, what's it called? Grass green. Okay, I'm going to start dark, and I'm going to go to light, and it's going to be a nice smooth transition across that cheek area. And I'm going to do the same thing over here where the dark green is, and I'm going to go up towards the eye. It's all about layering, folks. I don't want to put too much green right in here in the mouth because remember, we're using colored pencil. It's not just graphite where you can just keep shading over what you drew. You really start to you have to think about what colors are mixing in with others so it does not look muddy. And I think that's the other thing that hurts a lot of colored pencil drawings is, or just digital painting for that matter. Things start to get muddy because there's not enough contrast to it. Okay, so what we would need to do here is I'm going to take purple. All right, so this is, actually no, let's go with Prussian blue. And I'm going to go right in here in the gums. All right, so we'll put some Prussian blue in there. Mainly because the blue and the dark red are really going to go in well together. Okay, maybe this thing has some cool blood. It's not like normal mammalian blood. Of course it's not. It's not from Earth. So there's going to be some blue mixed in with that right around the mouth. Okay, so that's Prussian blue. I'm going to take that red again, and I'm going to go back over the Prussian blue to really mix that in there. And this is where layering with colored pencil gets really fun. and you can start to see colors that you normally wouldn't think of. So sticking to the face area, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the green and I'm going to darken up right around the eyes, and I'm going to keep the majority of the nostril or the beak area down on the top and the bottom. I'm going to keep that light. Even the fur or whatever type of covering that it has, I'm going to keep all of that pretty light, and then it'll just get darker as it moves out towards the head. And the reason I'm going to do this is going to add like a really cool, almost tropical bird look to it. And I think up here, I'm going to put some thick to thin lines of some strange shapes coming out. And I know there are some birds that actually have this. Very strange things indeed. I'm going to keep those pretty loose. I'm not really too concerned about those shapes for now. My main concern is just making sure the colors look good on that face. And whenever I feel good about the face, this is a personal thing for me, whenever I feel good about the face, it makes me feel better about the rest of the body because it kind of dictates on what's going to go on the rest of the body. So if everything's looking good here, I know the intensity that I need to put on the chest and on the shoulders or whatever body part is down there. And you're going to see here in just a few moments color being added in time lapse, where I'm going to spend a significantly bigger amount of time on these areas, and you're going to start to see things really come to fruition here. So if you're drawing along with me and you've made it this far and you've built some really cool things out of spheres, I don't know what you're drawing, but please join the Discord. Go into the description, you can see the links to our Discord. And people are joining every single day, and people are putting in their artwork and their personal work. It's just really, really cool to see what everybody is working on. There are school projects in there, personal projects, even some really well-known professionals are in there just putting in their work, showing everybody the ropes, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm just putting in a nice little foundation here of a darker upper body, even a darker upper neck too, because the neck is back here. This would be the shoulder area. All right, so we're just gonna do the same thing with the tail here. All right, so this is pretty much the same technique I use for my graphite whenever I want a really nice smooth area. I do a minimum of 3 different directions. Notice how I did not care if I went outside of the lines. This isn't a coloring book. We're sketching, okay? And we need to embrace the fact that not everything is going to be perfect, and that's going to allow our brains to really free everything up. Okay, without further ado, let's get in some time lapse, and I hope you have fun watching it. And let's get to it. Do you have trouble creating creatures without using reference at all? Today I'm going to introduce some techniques that I would do if you're in this situation where you want to create a creature like this from head to toe without any reference. Now I want to give a disclaimer, and that is, with my line of work and with anybody's line of work, when we have to design characters and creatures for games and film, we have to use reference, because if we were going to invent something from our head, we need to pull from imagery that we have already seen, and that is collecting reference for months, years, or days, months, years, whatever it takes to get the project done. Let's say that you want to come up with something so unique, so out of left field that you're not looking at any photos at all, and you just want to be able to use your imagination and have fun with it. So I'll teach you how to do that. And there's actually some easy ways in order to accomplish that. You know, if you want to do something mammalian, okay, like this, or alien, dinosaur-ish, you know, we could do that. Or we can get stuff that's a little weirder, you know, maybe some plant-like creatures, stuff that looks like rocks and lava. Or if we want to go completely insane and do something that is very scribbly, like this, okay, something really weird. Like you have no idea what's going on half the time when you're drawing these things. Like this thing up here. It looks like a spaceship, but it looks like an exoskeleton mixed with coral. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is, and I drew these 3 years ago. So it is what it is. But to add to the challenge today and add to the fun, I'm going to be drawing with a ballpoint pen, you see right here. So if you're interested in the exact type of ballpoint pen, it is the Ultra Round Stick Grip. Okay, it's just a standard black ballpoint that you can pick up at your local CVS, Walmart, Target, doesn't matter. Okay, you can order these for pretty cheap. You know, I have some links right on my video, so make sure that you know, you check that out so you don't have to go searching in person for them. We're going to be drawing right over here. I got this nice little spot opened up that we can do this in, and I'm going to show you some techniques. So get your sketchbooks ready, get your pens ready. If you want to do this in pencil, that's fine. The reason I encourage for this particular lesson to do it in pen is because there is no turning back. You are forced to lay down these markings and be happy with it, which is going to train your brain into concepting instead of overcorrecting. Okay, there's no erasers involved. We're not going to spend hours and hours shading, none of that. All right, so without further ado, let's get into some lessons. Now, if you've seen my previous lessons, you'll know that I encourage scribbling. Okay, so I just made a little mark here that you can see. It looks like a little hairball. There's nothing to it. It could literally be interpreted as anything. It could be a dead flower. It could be tumbleweed, a hairball, you name it. And I encourage this because it's going to free everybody's mind. Each one of us has a different set of markings that we like to put on the paper when we draw because it's comfortable. Okay, whether it's bubbly shapes, whether it's spiky, weird, veiny shapes, scales, rocky, dirt textures, whatever. So when it comes to scribbling, this kind of throws everybody's thought process and drawing something comfortable out the window. And what this does is it opens up your mind to new shapes, things that we probably normally wouldn't draw, including myself. So I will be the first to admit, whenever I draw stuff, I kind of go the insect route, just because when I grew up, I loved bugs, I obsessed about them. Yes, I was a nerd about that, along with dinosaurs, so I mixed the two together, hence why I draw creepy, hairy, alien bug stuff. But I get most of my work because of the creepy, hairy, alien bug stuff. So whatever your specialty is, you know, embrace that. But what I'm doing here is I'm just throwing some different markings together, all right? You don't have to worry about an eraser. You don't have to worry about correcting anything you're putting down. That's the other thing. When you're drawing in a sketchbook, remember that your sketchbook is your own journey. It's your own exploration diary, I guess you can call it. I think one of the things that I struggled with growing up was that everything that I put down on paper, I ended up trying to draw it for somebody else to approve of it versus me achieving a certain level of artistic or artistry. Okay, so instead of me wanting to get better, I was just drawing to try to be cool. And the thing is, when I say that your sketchbooks are a diary, it literally is that. Nobody has to approve of anything that you put in your sketchbook. Okay, because if you have a 100-page sketchbook and you start on page 1, what you're going to end up with on page 100 is probably going to be better than page 1. And if that's the case, then you have achieved more than most people ever will when they draw a sketchbook. Okay, and this is why I encourage all my students to date all of their work. You know, it's fun to see progress. We all want to see progress. We go to the gym, we don't see a six-pack right away. 3 weeks later, we start seeing our abs. It's like that, okay? But the initial stages of like starting out, it's pretty tough. Okay, so like, yes, I've been drawing for years. I've been studying animals and everything. But what am I going to do if I'm throwing all that away and I'm just trying to invent something that I've never drawn before? All right, let's get into it. So I have a bunch of weird shapes here. I don't even know if I'm happy with those. Okay, but that's not the point. It's okay to not be happy about your drawings. This isn't going to set my mood for the rest of the day. What it is going to do is give me some idea on what I can put in this empty space right here. All right, so let's give a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that some of you are sitting in a cafe right now. Your phone is in your pocket. There's no animals in sight, no insects, and you have absolutely no idea where to start drawing a creature. So you start obsessing about movies you've seen, or your pet, or something that is around you. Be like, I don't know where to start. I have no idea. Just start throwing lines down, okay? You got a pen. All right, let's do it lightly. I'm just going to start throwing large shapes first. Why large? Not small, large. Large because we are going to take care of the body, the main silhouette. You start large when you're inventing from the fly, and then you move in to like the tertiary details, instead of starting with the tertiary details and then trying to go wide, because whatever you put down first is going to dictate where everything is. If you get the whole silhouette of the creature's body in first, it's easier to work your way in because you know where not to expand anymore. Versus if you start off small, you don't know where to stop. So you just keep going on a drawing and then you end up hating it. So this way it gives you some boundary. All right, this is why in game design, when we do concept art, characters and creatures and armor, whatever you're drawing, it's good to have the strong silhouette first, because then you can move in to the minute details. Okay, so once we have this, I'm immediately starting to see, it's almost like a sea urchin. And I wasn't thinking of a sea urchin, I'm just now realizing that. And then I'm seeing some crisscrossing patterns here. It looks kind of like ribbing. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. All right, let's see where this goes. I'm going to push just a little harder so you can see some of these lines on camera. That's cool. And then I have this like bubbly shape here. It's an oval. I encourage you to check out my previous lesson. Earlier this month, I believe it was the end of March, maybe the beginning of April, where I was teaching you how to draw a creature using basic spheres. It's kind of like the same thing. It takes care of the large shape, and I encourage you to do that too. It's not just about scribbling shapes down that are jagged. You know, do some roundness. Okay, do some ellipses. Make sure you're drawing with your shoulder and not your wrist or your elbow. Okay. Now that we got that in there, looks kind of cool. I'm going to start throwing some other shapes together because I'm starting to see these sharp areas down here at the bottom. Okay, so again, I have no animal in mind. I did mention the sea urchin before, but it's clearly not a sea urchin. All right, I like that. These spiky bits down at the bottom are actually pretty intriguing, and it doesn't mean that this is a deadly creature, because there are plenty of animals on Earth where they look deadly, but they're actually pretty friendly, and plants too. I mean, that's the other thing about creature design is plants and creatures kind of go hand in hand, especially if it's on some strange alien planet. Like there's some weird plants out there. You got dragon fruit. You got stuff from all kinds of countries. It just looks weird. Okay. Now, all the stuff in the middle that I drew, I was just kind of rounding some areas off. I don't know what those can be, but I'm starting large, remember. Any kind of new area that I'm drawing in, I will start large and work my way small. So I'm getting a comfortable movement in here with my shoulder and how these ovals are just appearing. So what it looks like now is almost a mixture of something from the sea and an acorn and a jellyfish, actually. So something aquatic. That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll add tentacles later. I don't know. That's one of the cool things about drawing tentacles. You don't need reference for that. You don't. You just draw slithering snake-like shapes and you have a tentacle. Now, if you want to do something like an octopus where it has suckers, or something like a jellyfish where it's just stringy, but you need to know how long each section is, yeah, looking at reference will definitely help. But again, if you've made it this far, congratulations, you still haven't looked at any pictures of any creatures or whatsoever. All right, and now if you're wondering what I'm doing right this second, I'm just kind of floating my pen over certain areas just to see what sticks, like what looks good with what shape. Okay, so the other thing I just noticed I did, and I did not mean to do it, was that there seems to be a hump right here. And I like that. And it's also not completely symmetrical. So it looks like the back end of this creature is more bulbous. It's fatter than the front part. So these round shapes, I guess you can call them air sacs, they're a little smaller in the front. I kind of like that. So I think I'm going to go with it. Maybe this is the back, and maybe it's because I drew this tilted, so maybe it's moving in this direction. Okay, so that's good. Another thing that I forgot to mention is whenever you have a sheet of sketches, even if it's thumbnails, even if they are thumbnails, and even if it's in like the dirty, cruddy stage of design, it's always good to add some energy to your sketch pages. Because believe it or not, when you have a portfolio and you're trying to show it to a company, they tend to look at your thumbnails way more than your final polished pieces. And if your thumbnails don't have any energy to them, you don't have anything to bring over from your sketch stage over to the final stage. Have you ever noticed that like you'll have a really good looking sketch, but yet when you start to do a finalized colored version of it, it gets completely stiff and you lose the energy of it? That's what happens. So this is why this stage is so important. You need to capture the movement. And if that means showing weight distribution of your creature slightly leaning to the side, slightly leaning to one leg, study how people lean on their foot when they're waiting at a bus stop. Just look at them outside of your window when you're driving. We all have that main pivot leg that we turn with, and we all have that leg that we put all of our weight on when we're just kind of chilling, because everybody looks at their phone now. You'll see it everywhere. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm tilting the pen slightly to the side. So again, we're not drawing with a pencil, okay? So we don't have the luxury of correcting what we put down. And that's part of the fun about drawing with a pen, okay? I'm going over some areas that I actually really like with a very, very light touch with the pen. And it shades well. The markings that you put down with a ballpoint pen, you can't get this anywhere else with any other tool. None of the liquid pens. You could probably get it with a micron, but I will say that micron pens are much better for doing comic inking than they are for drawing. You could do some mechanical drawings with a micron, but if you want something totally freeing where you can get good line weight, do it with a ballpoint. Once we get these light markings down and we're starting to like the shape that we're making, we can start to look at little areas that are still open and maybe add some really cool things in here. So I want to keep the theme of these round shapes going. So what if I just make some smaller ones, and they're not all the same size, and they're just kind of filling the gaps of these open spaces. All right, so that looks kind of cool. It's almost like the top of this creature is going to have some kind of a weird exoskeleton, but it's not an insect. It doesn't swim. We don't know if it floats. We don't know what this is. And that's great. That's the mission for today's lesson. All right, so I'm just going to fill in some different areas. Whenever you sketch with a pen, take advantage of how dark you can actually get these things right on the fly. Okay, this is one of the many advantages of drawing with a ballpoint, is that you can go from dark to light instantly and you don't have to sharpen anything. It's awesome. All right, so I'm keeping things relatively light as I move up this strange shape. It probably could be the head, but I'm not sure yet. The reason I'm keeping it light is because the shapes they're large up here, and I don't know if I want to maybe put some more details on there later. It's kind of like I'm just laying the foundation for what could exist at a later time. But I'm going to make some of these round shapes bleed down into the body here and keep those different sizes. And then all of a sudden, maybe down here at the belly, I'll just make it bigger as it wraps down underneath. I'm saying belly because I'm starting to get a picture of what this can actually look like. I guess down here by the legs, I guess you can kind of, I don't know if those are legs, but maybe this opens and closes, and maybe it's like, maybe it puffs out air and it shoots forward. Who knows? This is pretty cool. I'm pretty hard on myself whenever I invent creatures on the fly if I'm not looking at reference, and I have to say I'm actually pretty happy with this. Usually I'm just very, very hard on myself. Man, back in the day when I was trying to get in the industry, I would start drawing stuff, and if I wasn't happy in the first 10 seconds, I would just close the sketchbook, open it back up maybe a day later, and then try to draw something else. Wasn't happy about that, and then I just wasted 2 sheets of paper in my sketchbook with no progress. I had to stop that crap. Like it wasn't good. But we all have to go through it. Part of it's just maturity too. So I had to mature as a designer. Your mind will calm. It really will. But at the same time, one way to calm your mind is to just draw. Just don't care about what happens. There we go. Now we're starting to see a pretty gnarly looking thing. Those of you that are watching right now, maybe you're drawing along with me, or you're just seeing what is about to happen, I would love to hear in the comments what you would actually call this thing. I don't know. That's the fun part, right? So I'm pretty happy with where these large scale shapes are. So what I'm going to do now is do a little trick I like to do with adding depth without shading. And that is any kind of surface or hole where there's no light coming in, I'll just make it dark. Usually when scale shapes, dirt, rocks, they all meet each other in a corner, I like to put little dark spots in there that kind of follow the shape, so it looks like there's a deep inset crevice. It gives depth without having to worry too much about shading to show the depth. All right, again, we're using a ballpoint, so there's not really going to be any shading to this, but instead I'm keeping my hand grip very, very light on this pen. Okay, you notice, like, I don't have to worry about smearing this pen nearly as much as I do smearing pencil. Okay, so I can rub my palm across here, but again, in the 90% of my lessons, I draw with a pencil, and I always tell people keep this part off of the page. This is the killer when it comes to smearing your graphite. It always happens because we're always rubbing this across there. So keep your pinky up, left hand, right hand, doesn't matter. And this way it'll help train you how to keep things light and moving. Okay. So now what I'm doing is these large bulbous shapes that are poking up here, I think what I'll do is show them on the other side very lightly. So it's going to wrap around this side. Remember, in the front of this creature, they're not going to be as big. So maybe just a hint. But what I have to do now to show depth is that this headpiece, I'm going to call it the headpiece because I don't know what else to call it. I'm going to put a nice outline here. So I'm just going to kind of feather in very light line, or no, I'm sorry, light to dark lines. All right, give a nice little ink outline here. You'll see in my previous lessons that I'll go light to dark really quickly, or dark to light, or light dark to light. Okay, so anytime I get a new shape in here, I'll usually go dark to light, fade the line off, and then I'll start dark again when the shape changes. Okay, but I'm keeping things very loose. I'm staying committed to my movements. That's the other thing that's gonna help you guys and girls draw, is that stay committed to your pencil stroke or your pen stroke. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll get obsessed about a certain area, and we'll do what's called hair marks. We'll just kind of draw, overcorrect, draw, overcorrect, draw, overcorrect, and there's no smoothness to your line work. And if you want to truly open your mind up and draw something without thinking too hard, you got to just commit to the whole thing. And this is where the fear of letting go really comes in. But I encourage you guys to, again, treat your sketches as if you're not going to be showing anybody else for approval. I'm not doing this for validation anymore. Okay. When I was younger, I drew because I loved it. That was like 99% of it. But I also wanted to be validated. Like I wanted to know if I was good. And it's hard when nobody tells you you're good. So you question, like, should I keep doing this? I don't know if it's working. I don't get a lot of likes. Like, I don't understand. And let me just tell you, stay with your journey. Okay, those of you that are drawing along with me right now, and you don't think you're good, and nobody says you're good, and like you feel like you're not getting the proper training. I understand that. I understand the frustration. You just have to put in the mileage, because at the end of the day, I could be telling you one thing here on YouTube. You could be looking at 5-6 other channels on how to draw. You can have a teacher and like your physical presence at a school teaching you how to draw. Everybody's viewpoint is different. You're not going to get good unless you just sit down and draw. Okay, you have to learn these movements yourself, because no teacher is going to know how your brain operates or your mechanical movements with your arm. All right, you just have to draw. And I think a lot of times when students want to learn how to be really, really good at art quickly, they think there's some surefire blueprint way to do it. Like, I want to know what to do in step A. I want to know what to do in blah, blah, blah. I'm not cutting that out. I want to know what to do in step B and C, and it just doesn't work like that. You're not going to get surefire answers that are going to give you top-notch results every single time. You just have to draw, and you have to suck most of the time. I know it's harsh to hear, but you do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now and this is different with a pen, is that these open areas I'm going to keep super light, but the pen offers a nice outline. So I'm going to keep my pen going at the same shape as that bulb. Like, it looks like an egg now. Okay, I'm going to do that. Oh, this is so weird looking. Okay, and then I'm going to keep these asymmetrical. So they're not going to be perfectly going across here. I don't know what the heck is happening, guys. I don't know what's going on here, but I kind of like it. Those of you that think you kind of know what I'm drawing, I would love to hear an idea. Maybe this is something from, I don't know, another galaxy. Maybe it's maybe it's bacteria that we don't know about yet. Maybe it's from Mars, who knows? All right, there we go. We're on the cusp of finding alien life too. We're very, very, very close. And I think once we find alien life, it's going to change the fundamentals of humanity forever into what we think is going on out there. Because I think a lot of people are scared to admit that it could exist, so they just make excuses for when we discover new things. That happens all the time. It's like, yeah, you want to call it closed-mindedness, but it's like there's going to be a time when you're going to look at stuff and you go, yeah, I can't deny that now. There's actually people out there that believe dinosaurs are fake. It's like, yeah, okay. I'm not even going to get into that argument. But anyway, Now this is really starting to come together, and actually it's kind of cool. I like it. Still not ready to shade yet, but I'm looking at these shapes. I'm going to turn this a little bit just so I can look at it, because I'm drawing with the sketchbook tilted, and I guess you guys can see it. Yeah, okay. Kind of looks like a fruit too, right? Some of the best tasting fruits in the world are scary looking. Like I mentioned before, dragon fruit, it looks like something Green Goblin would throw at you and it explodes. Like, it's so weird looking. Kind of like a bitter taste too. Okay. Oh, another thing that I'm going to do is with a pen or pencil, whenever you have the light source shining down on the object and you don't want to shade the shadow, just be sure to darken the underbelly part so that you can indicate where the shadow could exist underneath. And I think I'm going to do that throughout this entire bottom portion of the creature. How I'm actually putting the darkness down for the shadow, I'm just trying to look at shapes where there's a definitive line. I'm going dark to light. I'm using these short movements, okay, these short bursts with the pen. It's a little different, so you got to be more strategic. Okay, remember, once it's down, it is down. This is going to give you a really good look to your pen drawings. It's going to give a nice outline. Now, the other thing to add depth without shading so much is that anything closest to us, just give a slightly darker treatment to the outline of it, and then you want to fade that off into the background. So I had mentioned in one of my previous lessons about how outlining isn't good if you want realistic drawings. No, it doesn't mean the outlining is horrible, and there's nothing wrong with cartoons or anything like that. I'm talking about just adding realistic depth to your drawings. Okay, you want to fade that off. You want to show some darkness in the front, some lighter drawings in the background, just so it looks like there's a depth of field without having to worry too much about details. All right, so move this over here. So these shapes are obviously in the front versus the other bulbous shapes in the back, so that's going to get a slightly darker treatment here. Okay, and I'm walking over some gestural lines. These extra lines that I put down as I draw, they're more of a guide for me than they are actual functional markings that I need to put down in order to show skin, wrinkles, scales, fur, spikes, etc. I don't need to do it, but it helps me. Because let's face it, when you're drawing with a pen, texturing is different than it is with a pencil. Graphite spreads much farther on paper than ink. So that means that texturing is easier with a pencil. More space gets taken up, the texturing is larger in your line of sight, therefore it looks more finished, all right? Okay, so once I do that, I'm just gonna keep those light in the back. I'm not really going to add any darkness back there per se, except for maybe this area where two of the bulbous shapes encircling the back of this creature, there's probably no light getting into that spot down there, okay? And I just want you to be able to see it. All right, so once we got that, we got to finish these two. See how I jump around? It's okay to jump around. No, I'm not going to sing jump around. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I know you guys know what song I'm talking about, but that would be so incredibly corny if I did that on YouTube. I'm not going to do it. Now I can't get the song out of my head. Oh, man. Okay, anyway. Now that we have that, I actually am going to put a little bit of shading in now in areas where I know that there's a big transition, almost like a trench happening. And that is right in between here. So how would I shade with a pencil? All right. Now, before I do this, those of you that have been following along with me and you're drawing something that you have never drawn before and you haven't looked at any reference, congratulations. You are already on your way of inventing something on the fly without looking at anything. Now, once we're finished with this drawing, we can obviously go into Google and just look at real animals and go, oh, that's wrong. That joint's wrong, that doesn't look like anything, blah, 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 and overcorrect it. Yes, we could do that. But just to be able to come up with something, it's open to interpretation, which is the fun part about thumbnailing. It's the fun part about character design and creature design. Like, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it could be for whatever. All right, I'm going to tilt my pen to the side here. If you have problems at the end of your ballpoints with blotches of ink that maybe collect at the end of it, then you should do two things. One, wipe it away. So just take your pen off to the side, turn it, and then it gets the blotch off of it, or the blob of ink. Two, buy new pens. Quit drawing with the same crappy pen that you've been doing for like 6 months. Just go get a new pen. These are not expensive at all. I think you could buy a whole 12-pack of Bic for maybe $10, $8 on Amazon. I don't know. All right, turn it slightly to the side. Now the way I'm holding a pen is a little different than a pencil because that is such a smaller surface area to work with when you shade. So you need to hold it closer to the tip. And I'm just going to lean it to the side and lightly push, and I'm going to hatch my shading. Okay. Now I'm not cross hatching because there's nothing crossing those lines. I'm single hatching. Sometimes I like walking them, so I'll do little bursts like this. Real fine lines, lightly drawn. My palm is resting on the page like this. I just turn my fingers down and I just kind of walk it as if I'm drawing hair, and I keep the strokes close together. Okay, and then guess what? I'm going to turn my page and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm cross hatching, but you start with a single hatching. But each time I'm moving up the area, I'm going to press lighter and lighter. Now, you could treat it like a pencil and just kind of stagger them like this and not letting go of your pen off of the paper. You could do that, but you got to be careful because you will get strokes that are different with a pen than you do with a pencil. It's not going to bleed into the other stroke as easily as it does with a pencil. Graphite upon graphite, it tends to look way better when it's like mixed together tightly. With a pen, you probably need a lot more passes, okay? Because it's going to look like cross hatching even if you do 6 or 7 passes. Like with the graphite or with the pencil, it's going to fill the area much easier. So I'm just going to show you what you can do here. I'm tilting the pen far enough to where the ballpoint is barely touching the paper. And what that means is there's a point where you start to shade with a pen, even if you tilt it to the side, where it doesn't feel like the ball is actually touching the paper anymore, the ink part. And there's barely any ink coming out. That's actually a good thing because that's going to enable you to sketch lightly. So if you look at my drawing up here, okay, there's some areas in here on the skin where I just kind of overlapped. I just made some jagged shapes very lightly, and as I crisscrossed and I did some random patterns, it formed its own texture. But it was so light because I turned it to the side that, you know, it kind of took care of the shading for me. All right, so once I'm over here, all right, man, this thing is looking gnarly. I'm going to start to put some very light markings in those little crevices here. The great thing, well, yeah, it's great, but also the beautiful thing about drawing with a pen is that each single line that you put down is so visible. There's no iffy areas really when you draw with a pen. Like every single marking has a purpose. And that's what you want to remember when you're drawing, when you're finalizing a drawing, okay? When you're coming up with something on the fly, like nothing has a purpose yet, except for starting with the silhouette. Remember when we first started this drawing, we're just like, I don't know where it's going to go, but we got to do the body first. That's like the only real part where you shouldn't care about how it ends up. Now that I'm doing this, there actually is going to be a core shadow running on the outside here. And the way I can achieve that with a pen is just like running my pen across the edge of it. Just make sure that you acknowledge each individual shape that you're putting the shading on top of, just so it looks more realistic than just putting a straight line across rounded shapes. Then it doesn't look good, because you know, when a shadow hits an egg or hits an orange or something round, it's going to follow the roundness. Okay, that's why the core shadows on spheres are so hard to draw. There we go. I'm really excited to announce that I'm currently working on a foundation drawing series that you can actually purchase. You know, I'm going to have my Shopify open soon. The links will be right in my YouTube channel, where you can purchase individual lessons on how to draw cubes, cones, cylinders, and spheres, see in depth on how I shade those realistically to the point where they look like they're coming off the page, and also how to map the shadows to them if you're going to shine a light on them. So everything that I taught in foundation school, I'm going to pour all my knowledge into it. I'm going to create my own syllabus so you can follow along at your own pace. I also encourage you to not only subscribe to my channel if you're new to it, but join our Discord, our Creature Design Workshop Discord. The link is in the description. It's free to join. I'm also starting up my May Creature Design Workshop. Okay, it's going to run 4 weeks. I have a website for that if you want to sign up. Again, all the info is also in our Discord. It's bustling. People are entering the Discord every single day. We probably get like 2-3 dozen people joining per day, and it's just growing. It just keeps growing. It's just great. Word of mouth, more videos I post. It's awesome. And I encourage you guys to, put the link out to my Discord in places that I don't know of, places that maybe you're a member of, and you think people can benefit from learning not just how to draw creatures, but just to draw in general. Okay, that's why we're here. We're learning how to draw creatures, but we're also learning how to draw. Okay, and we have a personal work channel where people just post their doodles every day. Nobody's there to judge anybody. There's awesome feedback. Like it's a fun community. So I encourage you guys to join the Discord. All right. Now that we have darkened this area, this is like the main area of focus. The possibilities are endless with this thing. Maybe it squeezes. I'm thinking, I don't know what it's called, but it's when you need to add oxygen to a fire in a fireplace and you kind of just blow the air into it. Whatever that technical name is, somebody please mention it in the comments. Air blower? I don't know. Fire blow? I don't know. But it's pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of that. Maybe it floats like that. Maybe this thing floats in the atmosphere. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I took a little break there, and as I was looking at my sketch, I realized that there's some really cool opportunities for these strange horizontal slashes to actually expand and contract. So maybe it breathes that way. Maybe these are air sacs, and it actually does float. It's a floating creature. I think that'd be kind of cool. So in that case, I think what I'll do is maybe darken these lines right here in the front, and only the outermost crest of the round part, and maybe they open that way, but we really can't see it open. It's like an implied function. So I'm just going to put a darker line there. And so what am I doing, and why am I drawing like this? You'll notice my hand moving the way it is. When it comes to tertiary details, this is what I consider a tertiary detail. It's smaller. I can concentrate on a smaller area. I've already done the heavy lifting. Okay, we got the big silhouette here. We got the secondary details, which are like these weird movable spike things. And then we have the tertiary details starting out. And that is the smaller scales. Actually, these larger scales in the head probably could be secondary details, because they're not super small, but they're also not the biggest. Okay, so here I have to pay attention to the roundness of these shapes. Okay, remember they're asymmetrical. So as it's wrapping around the shape, this is where realism comes in. I need to define for myself where that ends. So I'm going to end that round shape here so that I know where that wraps around. And when it comes to creature design, especially if you're doing it for a client and it'll eventually get modeled, the modeling department needs to have a clear design on what your intention is. Okay, because remember, the modeling department, they're not the concept artists. They're just modeling what you concepted. So the clearer you are with your design, the easier it is for them to model. Through my years of experience, I've made mistakes before where I kind of left places ambiguous because I thought, well, I mean, the thing is going to be modeled. They could just like finish it. And it's not fair to the modeler to do that. Now, yeah, sometimes modelers they can draw too, and they're good at concepting, but you can never just jump into a situation and assume that they'll do that, because that's not their job. Okay, I'm not really trying to go on a side tangent here. I'm trying to help you. Those of you that maybe are like starting off in the industry, or you don't really have strong concepts, the stronger the concept, the more clear it is, the better chances you have of actually doing more concept work. Okay, clarity is key in our industry. Okay, so again, the outermost edge here, over here is where we're going to see that darkness, but it's not going to be as dark as the darker slits here. Why? Depth. Remember, we don't have a pencil. Okay, so I can't just shade in atmospheric perspective and mist and, you know, heat waves or whatever. I got a pen to my disposal. I have line weight and I have line quality, which has been a previous lesson this month also. So I encourage you to go back and look at my line weight, line quality lessons, sketching things with spheres, cones, cylinders, and cubes. Okay, it all ties together. Once we get these foundations, once we get the foundation of drawing down, and we're getting better and better at it, this isn't like pulling your chain or anything. You can draw anything in the world, anything. Okay, rockets, I don't know, people, plants, anything. Okay, the outer part, I'm pretty happy with. I don't need to do anything over there. But what I do need to do is figure out where I want to spend time putting in some actual details. And whenever we draw a creature, so we invented this from the fly. This doesn't look like anything that I can think of. There are some things on planet Earth that it kind of resembles, you know, like fruit, strange bacteria, larva. Like I don't know, but that's the fun part. That's why I'm doing the lesson today. When we draw creatures, we need to have a focal point. Okay, and I have mentioned this before, where we have what's called the sea of sameness, and that is from head to toe, everything has the same exact amount of detail. It's overpowering, it punches us in the face for the wrong reasons, and we don't have a focal point. So if you're drawing along with me and you're trying to determine, okay, what is the selling point of the creature that I'm making? Is it just some random thing that can kill you? Is it, you know, does it all look awesome? You want to put details everywhere because you want to show everything off? That's not the point. There's power in what we don't know about something, and there's even more power in looking at that particular creature and going, ah, the focus is on the horns in the front or the teeth. That is the selling point. All right, so we need to think about the selling point, and I think, now that I'm looking at this, the selling point is actually these slits. And that was not the intention. See guys, this is the fun part. Like, we're all on this journey together. All right, so whatever you're drawing right now, look down at it and go, if I were to put this in a movie, what would make it a character? Or if I were to put this in a game, why would it exist in the game? Am I just drawing something random? Or does this thing actually have a real function in a real environment? That's what you need to think of. So, as I'm drawing these little slits, I think what I'll do is maybe put like I guess you can call it a chamfer. Those of you that don't know what a chamfer is, you see them on cars a lot, especially hard-edged cars. You see a little, instead of having something super hard on the edge, you have like a little relief, a little light catcher. It's like a little part of the material that flattens off before it goes down to a new surface. That's like layman's terms what a chamfer is. All right. Plus, chamfer is just, it's fun to say. Chamfer. All right. Once I have that, now I can start thinking of, what's going to happen in between here in the skin? Well, I actually have these secondary details of the scales. Why not just put really small little circles in here that kind of, it ties in all of these bulbous shapes together. So it's almost like there are scales in here, and that's its skin. So maybe it's kind of like the creature's glue. I don't know. Think about a turtle shell, you know. Like the shells actually are attached to the turtle. You can't just take a turtle out of the shell. The ribs are attached to the shell. So maybe you can't take these smaller things off. So you notice that there's a size differential to show the realism of this thing. Look how large these shapes are in the very top. Maybe this actually opens up too in the top. That would be really creepy, but also cool at the same time. Okay, but maybe they start off large and then they get medium and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then as they open up to bigger areas, maybe in the underbelly, they're gonna get large again. So I'm just gonna start putting in some circles, ellipses, ovals, whatever you wanna call them. Just kind of walking them down the cracks there. I'm not gonna worry about these places because quite frankly, you can't see that. In perspective, the round shapes are going around the creature, so you won't be able to see these individual spaces in between. But again, we're implying that these areas exist on the other parts. That's why you have to have a focal point. If you have a focal point that explains the majority of the creature's like details or function, you don't need to prove to anyone that the other parts have a function. We know that. Okay? It's kind of like, I'm trying to use an analogy, well, not really an analogy, but another example. It's kind of like character concept artists, if they're just starting out and they put in figure drawing in their portfolios, don't do that. Just draw characters, because if your characters look good, the art directors are going to know that your anatomy is good. You don't need to prove that you have anatomy skills by drawing stuff from anatomy class. It's kind of like the same thing. Okay, we know what's happening around the other side. All right. There we go. And again, I'm just kind of walking some scribbles over just to see what happens. Now, again, I have to be solid with my design here. So if these flaps or little slits open, then we need maybe kind of like a membrane at the end of it or some kind of indication that the end of those lines attach to those scales somewhere. Maybe the scales are the actual skin. I'm going to put some more ink in here, just kind of round this off. You can consider this a core shadow. Okay, again, I'm going to be explaining this in my foundation series coming out soon. Core shadow is essentially if, you know, on a round object, if the light is hitting the round object, the core shadow is where the least amount of light is touching the object before it starts to bend around the other side of it. That's the easiest way to explain it. Everything has a core shadow. Your arm has a core shadow. Your lips, sticks, you know, animals, they all have it. There we go. I'm just starting to round this stuff off. Again, with a pen, I love just walking over these lines. You can see a combination of different types of lines in here. Very, very, very faint light gestural lines, some secondary darker lines like this, and some more harsh lines, maybe where the least amount of light is touching. And you can layer these with a pen, just walk them over. Again, just commit to the shape, guys. Just commit to it, and it'll be easier that way. There we go. Now that we're starting to have these cool markings in here, you could look at this sketch and go, hey, guess what? I'm done. I don't need to draw anything else. But let's put some finishing touches on this, and if you followed along with me so far drawing what I'm drawing, or maybe drawing your own version of it, congratulations. I mean, like, you're already a better designer than you were when you started out. Okay, now I'm just kind of separating some areas that were ambiguous that didn't really look like they were attached to anything. I'm just adding in some darker lines here where they may exist. So we'll see. Yeah, like under here where I kind of forgot. There we go. And also these sharp shapes, I need to figure out, okay, it looks like some of them are attached to the bulbous shapes and some of them are not. That's okay. This is more of an asymmetrical random creature, so maybe this thing didn't evolve the way we thought it should. I'm going to put some edges on here, and it could also be like these are nails, but they're not used to hurt you, they're just used to crawl. So maybe this thing does float in the air, however, when it lands on surfaces like rocks or whatever, maybe it needs it in order to crawl. So that'd be kind of cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some little details here to kind of bring out these areas. Maybe I'll put in a shape or a line that actually goes down vertically on these to really add some texture to it. That'd be kind of cool, actually. So if you have a name for this thing, of what it is or what kind of species it could be, what planet it's from, I would love to hear it. I love hearing creativity in the comments. Some of you name my creatures really funny stuff. Usually the more outlandish something looks, the more simpler the name, like Joe or Nancy. It's kind of like dudes that are huge, you know, like gigantic football players and they're named Tiny. You know, that kind of stuff. There we go. All right, I'm kind of proud of myself. I didn't put any spikes on anything. No bumpy, like, no spiky alien stuff. Everything's down here. And I'm going to hold myself to that. I'm not going to add anything else. All right, so hopefully you liked today's lesson. Again, you know, rewatch it and watch my other lessons where I go over the simplicity of sketching these things. Join our Discord. Just look at the link in the description. Sign-ups for my creature design workshop are going on right now. You can find it through the Discord, and there's actual separate link through the description. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and can't wait to do my next lesson. So thanks for sticking around. Later.